It's about discipline, right? And it's about being thoughtful and intentional with the way that you respond, and making rational decisions, right? As a leader, that continues to build trust, right? Trust in your team, trust in your organization, that you're making thoughtful, intentional, strategic decisions that are for the betterment of the entire organization and team. Again, removing that quick emotional reaction and really being thoughtful about the response.
Hey, I'm Chris Steer, and you're listening to the Art and Science of Leadership podcast. So welcome, the show where we break down what it really takes to lead with care, clarity, and connection. This podcast is built around what we can learn from neuroscience, organizational data, lived experience, and timeless wisdom when it comes to the art and science of leadership, so that you can not only grow and learn, but also bring your teams and your organizations to a higher level. We're all about permanent beta, always learning and never done growing. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Art and Science of Leadership podcast. I am Chris Steer, and I am joined once again by my leadership partner in crime, Amy Larkin, and we are beyond excited to talk about a topic today that has, we believe, universal appeal and universal impact for leaders across organizations of all sizes. And it's also a very relevant tool and practice area for athletes, which, as you know from listening to previous episodes with Amy and I in the past, we often draw these amazing correlations and simpatico themes from the world of athletics, and also that really connects clearly and easily to the world of leadership and management and entrepreneurship. So we hope you enjoy this one today. And today we are going to be talking about the mindset of the next play. The next play. We pull that from the world of athletics, but it's also very steeped in the philosophy of Stoicism, which is all about the idea of response. It's not the external event that happens. It's what you control, which is your response. Amy, I mean, holy cow, we could jump in a bunch of different spots, but I don't know about you, but I'm pretty fired up to talk about how we respond, how we focus on the next play.
You know, Chris, I'm happy to be here. And I think all the podcasts that we've done over the past couple of weeks really culminates today with everything that we've talked about in terms of failing forward. And it really is about embracing the process, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the outcome. And how you respond to all your situations, be it in sport or business, really starts to define you as a leader. As an individual, as a teammate. And I think, reactive response sometimes is emotional, right? I know I could probably speak from a lot of ways that I've reacted to various situations throughout not only my career, but my life, as a friend, a mother, a businesswoman, where I wish I would have paused, right?
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken a second to really just assess, absorb, and figure out what should be the next step forward. And instead, I was emotionally tied up in that moment, and I reacted. My husband would probably say that I do this fairly frequently. But, it is part of the process. It is part of growing as an individual, as a leader, to be able to know when you need to take a step back, in order to be a better advocate for your team, yourself, and make better short and long-term decisions.
Yeah, no question about it, and well stated. And I think we all have a level of regret that we didn't learn some of these principles and these tools earlier in life. But I would say two things about that, which is regret is an emotion that does not serve you. So I try to remind myself of that often, because in fact, I said this with a chief executive client yesterday, which is, wow, gosh, I wish I had known some of this, 25 years ago. And I caught myself mid phrase, because that is regret that doesn't serve me, but it is an honest feeling. But the good news is that we tend to, over generations, we've said, well, you'll learn that through experience, and you'll learn that as you get wiser and as you have experience. But the fact of the matter is, teenagers, college athletes, people that are just launching their careers, all the way to CEOs of Fortune 500 organizations, this is something that is absolutely accessible to them. You and I, in preparation for today, we spoke about some of our own transformational experiences with this next play mindset. And one of mine, and I'm going to fast forward beyond the athletic career and more into my operator and entrepreneurial career, was I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And that for me really set a lot of things in motion in embracing this idea of response, of stoicism, starting to really delve into stoicism, and really focusing on being able to act with my eyes forward. And so we just want to encourage for all of our listeners that Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning is a wonderful tool. And we'll talk more about that later. But I know you and I have we have some similarities in terms of the experiences that we've had that help us to shape this dynamic.
That's right. And I think it really is, it's about discipline, right? And it's about being thoughtful and intentional with the way that you respond, and making rational decisions, right? As a leader, that continues to build trust, right? Trust in your team, trust in your organization, that you're making thoughtful, intentional, strategic decisions that are for the betterment of the entire organization and team. Again, removing that quick emotional reaction and really being thoughtful about the response, right?
Yes.
And I think being able to take that space in terms of what happens and then what you do with that is where true leadership and true growth really happens.
That's right on.
And I think, looking back, over the course of my career, without a doubt, I mean, I still make those reactive decisions sometimes, but I think even when you look at athletes, Chris, and the way that they handle themselves, some of the top athletes, some of the top teams around the world, they seem so calm under pressure, right? Are they? I'm not really sure what's happening on the inside, but they're really, great about their discipline in their control, to be able to focus on that next move as opposed to what just happened that maybe didn't go their way. And I think there's so much to learn. Again, tying back to sport, and it's so relative, and it's so people have the ability to understand and relate to athletes of all kinds, whether it be golf and what we just saw transpire just a short time ago with that incredible win at the Masters, or some of the best athletes around the world that maybe weren't the best coming out of college, that somehow reworked their brain and the way that they approach their sport. And one of the commonalities, I believe, is, again, it goes back to loving the process, right? Loving the process and loving the time for growth and learning. And that 95+% of time, you're going to fail. And it's how you respond to those failures and adjust and adapt and be able to put those practices into play to make you better, is really what it all comes down to.
That's right. There's three individuals, one team and two individuals that come to mind when you were just sharing that, Amy. One was, as you referenced, Rory McIlroy, who is a stated student of Stoicism, which again focuses on not the stimulus, but the response, and that being everything within your control. Missing some of those short putts, having to then emotionally respond and hit a perfect ball. That is an incredible act of response and the next play. Then I thought about the UConn women's basketball team who just won the national championship, right, and talk about resilience. You said they looked so calm, and they did. That group in particular looked so calm in the Final Four. Yet when you learn more about the backstory of Azzi Fudd or Paige Beckers, you know that they came off traumatic injury. They came off a lack of confidence. They came off a lack of belief, and being able to channel that next play, channel the response, not the event. And then I think about Steph Curry. And when you said maybe not recognized in college, that was certainly his narrative coming out of Davidson. And now he's arguably the best point guard in the history of the game. And someone who understands next play, someone who's going to chuck it 30 times and go over 30, but it's going to put up a 31st shot. That's him, right? That's him. And that's his philosophy and his mindset. So you and I, we love to talk about athletics. We'd like to talk about our own empirical experiences, but we also bring in neuroscience. And I'm going to channel our colleague, Dr. Carly Hunt, who says that outcome is not just the event, it's event plus your response that creates the outcome. And we don't think about that, right? We don't think about and contemplate. This goes back 2,300 years to ancient Stoicism, which is your response dictates your success, your joy, your peace of mind. Now, modern neuroscience confirms that, which is to say we can rewire our neural pathways to choose that it is our response that is going to impact our well-being and our peace of mind, as I mentioned, and our success. Nothing about the event, because the event is neutral. And that's something that requires a different kind of mindset. The event is neutral. Most people have not heard that in their life, right? They think, oh, event bad, event challenge, event hard. No, it's your perception of that event.
That's right.
Everything becomes about learning.
It does become about learning. And, another common thread, I think that as we have done research, we have talked to many different leaders, we have watched many different teams and athletes over time, Chris, is, the ability to remove the noise, right, is such an important component of leadership and learning today.
Yes.
Because there are so many distractions, right? When you and I were younger, riding big wheels, doing our thing, there were no phones. There was no social media. And so today, more than ever, those distractions can have a detrimental impact on mindset, right?
Correct.
And the way that an athlete, a leader, a teammate performs, right? How you feel about yourself, that negative imposter syndrome, that negative self-talk, because you're reading every single comment, you're reading, and you've got this terrible underlying subconscious that is constantly playing games in your head, whether you realize it or not. Right? It's, I constantly always say around the house, the beautiful, quote that, comparison is the thief of joy, right? Well, that is the world that we're living in right now. Even though you may not believe that you're comparing yourself to others or comparing your last play to your next play, sometimes you get caught up in the world, and that is what social media and all of these technology platforms really do. Sure. And so how do you, as a leader, as someone who's trying to build confidence in yourself, trying to focus on the next play, how do you remain focused? How do you remain disciplined and make sure that your mind is in the right place to do your job, or to perform at your very, very best? And a lot of that is silencing the noise, right?
Yes.
Field of Dreams.
Yes.
Let's bring up
100%.
all the great movies of all times
Right.
that
Right.
we want our children today to watch, because they really do. They really do hit on such amazing points that make you realize how much the world has changed, and how
sure.
difficult it is to get yourself in that place to where you can allow yourself to grow and learn and not be so critical of
That's right.
every single move that you make,
Right.
and reviewing a mistake 1,000 times over instead of just saying, I made the mistake, but here's everything I learned from that mistake. And I'm going to go out and I'm never going to make that mistake before, or I'm going to keep working until I fix it, or until I get better, or till I make that part on that innovative technology work.
Right. That's a perfect pull through, Amy, into the organizational manifestation of next play, of response, right? And you and I have studied patterns. We've experienced patterns too. We've lived them as leaders and operators, but we've been researching patterns for decades now. And when you look at the patterns of high performing leaders in the organizational context, they do not allow their attention and focus to be up for grabs. Mm-hmm. And so, whereas these platforms that you're referencing, they're all grabbing at and chipping away at your attention and your focus. Whereas the patterns of high performance yield the following, right? They show us that the effective leader is not attention starved. He or she is focused on the priority. They're focused on the learning, as you described, Amy, and the next play, the next right move, pulling the learning through. And I think, as we would refer to our Stoic studies, it is all about how I respond that's going to dictate the success of my team, my department, my organization. And putting our best focus and our best hours against the best priority is helpful to being able to make the next play, to quieting the noise, as you say, allows us to make the next play, and to respond. It is such the earlier in your career, in your athletic career as well, that you embrace this, the richer and fuller and more successful it will be.
That's right. That's right. I think sometimes too, that reaction, that emotional reaction, I think it just comes naturally, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why that pause is so very, very important, especially as a leader, because sometimes you don't know the full picture of what is actually happening in that moment, right? That's one thing that I have learned over the course of my life and my career, is that, you don't necessarily know when somebody is emotionally charged coming at you, what they have going on in their life, or if a situation has escalated, the full picture. That's your job as a leader, is to be able to take that step back for a second, really pause, get the full breath of the situation, what's going on, and then be able to make the next best decisions. And I think that is the hardest thing to do sometimes, is to remove your ego from play, right? Is, I have it all figured out in that one moment. No, you don't necessarily. Right. Because you may only have one side of the story. Right. And it's your job and your responsibility to be able to be mature enough to say, I'm not going to react, I'm going to respond. Correct. And from there, it allows you to reset the mind, right? Come up with a plan, refocus your team, and then run the next play, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
All about next play.
And everyone's watching, right? So don't think for a minute within the organizational context that your teams, across teams, interdepartmentally, from the floor to the boardroom, people are watching how you respond. And so don't allow, as you encouraged us, Amy, don't allow we need to practice the emotional management. It's not just emotional intelligence. it's the emotional management as well.
Yeah.
And because how you respond is going to have this cascading effect on others. Same thing on the field, right? We see that all the time. How's my coach going to react? How's my captain going to react? Because that's going to set the tone, right? So we are tone setters. Leaders are tone setters, and it requires you to, as you said, have the power of the pause, to be able to respond and be thoughtful about your response, because that's what drives performance. Look, you and I wouldn't be talking about this if it didn't drive performance. We know that this drives performance. So being able to respond, because that is within your control, leveraging that power, the power of the next play is an imperative in modern leadership to drive high performance. Amy, I don't know. This is another one of those topics. I think we keep teeing these up where we could talk for hours on this, but we really want people to respond and react themselves in terms of what we're talking about. Respond thoughtfully, of course, but in terms of how you are leveraging this, what you are learning in terms of how you can respond better. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we look forward to bringing you more of this relevant content that's going to help you drive better performance as a leader. Amy, thank you again. I think we've got some really good nuggets in here.
It's been a great time always, Chris. And remember, run the next play. It's always about the next play and how you respond. Thanks for joining us.
Love it.